Today I'm sitting down with an ex-Uber senior technical recruiter. Her name is Katie. She's been in recruiting for over 10 years, and I brought her on the channel to ask her some brutally honest questions about the current state of the tech market in 2025 going into 2026. We talk about AI, layoffs, if the market's going to recover, what niches are most in demand, and she shares a ton of insider information that I think is really valuable to hear. Now, Katie is fantastic. I work with her directly inside of DevLaunch, and with her assistance, we've been able to land tons of students' jobs in the past few months, even though the market is not as good as it used to be before. If you want to work with people like Katie and myself, then consider applying to DevLaunch from the link below. And with that said, let's get into the interview and hear from this ex-Uber senior technical recruiter. So Katie, thanks again for joining me here. I just want to give you a quick chance to give an intro to the audience. Tell me about yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Katie. I have been in tech recruiting now for almost 10 years, which is crazy. I've worked with Fortune 50, big tech most recently, unicorn startups, you name it. And I love working with you guys, and I help out on like the resume and career branding side.
Awesome. Yeah, Katie's been working with me now for over 2 months inside of DevLaunch. She's done fantastic, really helping people kind of do the positioning, the branding, getting past that first stage, and then we kind of take over for the interviewing. But anyways, in this video, I want to skip past some of the resume stuff and talk about kind of the current state of the market. You're going to know it better than probably a lot of other people here in the real reality, because you're actually hiring developers. You hear about the budgets, you hear the yeses and no's and the rounds. So I want to dive into some of those questions. The first thing I have for you is kind of just a general one. What is your analysis of the tech market today? Like, is it actually way worse than it used to be a few years ago? Is it objectively really, really, really bad? Because we hear all the doomsday stuff going on social media. What do you think, being kind of on the inside?
Yeah, so I think definitely the amount of roles has gone down. And I also think that the quality has gone up that the companies are asking for, right? Like the roles are there. It's just they have a higher bar. So you really, really have to make an impact in your interviews. So I would say that's like the biggest thing, that people just aren't handing out like the offers, like comp wise. Also, they've really, really have like tightened pockets. So like comp wise, but also just like they're not handing out offers to anybody anymore. Yeah,
the bar is just a lot higher. And it's always funny to me because people want to be software engineers. And I mean, the title alone, engineer, should qualify the fact that like you have to be qualified to get one of these jobs. You have to be good at programming. You have to actually be able to pass these. I know they seem weird tests, but you should know how to code, right? If you want to land a software engineering job. And it's kind of funny because a few years ago, that almost wasn't really the case, where as long as you had like some kind of experience, you could go in there and land something, which was kind of wild times. I think people got used to that. And now today they're like, wait, I actually have to like prepare for an interview. Oh my God, that's crazy. So anyways, what I've seen a lot is like some of the senior developers seem to be doing fine. I don't hear them kind of complaining as much. Like you said, the bar is higher. They can kind of pass through some of those rounds. But what about the juniors? Are companies still hiring junior developers today? Do you see those roles? Because I get the complaints all the time from my audience that I don't have any experience. I just graduated with a CS degree. How can I break into the market? I'm going to go do something else. And it's kind of this never ending, just like depression of I can't land a tech job.
I did see like Meta post, and not just software engineering, but like product managers too, like hiring a ton of entry level, because it went viral because they're like 200K jobs for entry level, and they're actually entry level. And this was just a couple days ago. So it is out there. Again, it's just like keeping your pulse, like finger on the pulse, like to see what companies are hiring, and timing is everything. And just like staying on top of that is what I would say. But yeah, they're definitely still hiring. And like, there's so many companies out there too. There's so many different industries. Like, you think the medical industry is slowing down? No, but there's like med tech. Like there's so many different like things going on. I know that even Ford, one of the executives spoke a couple days ago saying that they've like, it's a little unrelated, but like 6,000 manufacturing jobs opening that they can't fill, that are paying $120 a year. That's crazy. You know what I mean? So like there's jobs out there, like, and again, I know not like super relevant, like with the software engineering piece, but like my point is that there are entry level jobs out there, like for software engineering. Like you just have to look a little bit, do a little bit more research.
For sure. I think a lot of people just get stuck on, oh, Amazon laid off some employees, or oh, this big tech company's not hiring. But that's, a very small percentage of the actual total software engineering market. I mean, we're both working with people right now who have landed entry-level software engineering jobs. they do exist, but it's just a slightly different approach to land those jobs and to find them than you might have had 5, 6 years ago. So you kind of have to, like you said, keep up to date with the market and kind of keep immersed into it and not just give up, when the first 50 applications didn't lead to something. Now, with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about AI. So from your perspective, has AI like reduced the demand for traditional software engineering jobs? Are you seeing like at Uber, for example, are they hiring like way less people because they have 500 AI software engineers? What's your kind of take on that trend? Like, are companies really utilizing AI, and is that hurting software developers?
People might not like this answer, but like, yes, like I do think it's real. Like Salesforce was notorious because they laid off like 5,000 engineers or something like that. More on like the roles that'll be affected will be more on like marketing or like maybe even like sales or, like different industries like within like a company, right? But I do think that like, especially on like the developer velocity type of like in those orgs, like at those companies, like they really have like to make actual engineers more efficient, like a double-edged sword. Like I do think it's great, like, and it's helping engineers. Yeah, it may also take some jobs. Like I do think that's very real. At the end of the day too, you still need engineers to like drive projects, and like AI can't do that. Like it's not going to drive a project and like influence orgs or like influence a team, like and roadmaps and stuff. Like no, like I don't think, like you still need a human for that.
So with that in mind, like, because AI is obviously, being a disturbing force like in the market here, if you're an engineer, how do you maybe like use that to your advantage? Or is that something that comes up in interviews? Like if I'm someone who doesn't have a job right now, I'm trying to land a role, like should I be using AI? Should I talk about that in my interview? Should I like develop some AI skills? Is that something you guys are looking for, like on the recruiting side?
Yes. And now even in like my industry with recruiting, like they're making it screening questions for us. So it's like, how are you using AI to better like, your interview questions for, candidates? And, like, how are you implementing AI? Like, because if you're not, like, you're behind. So I think that it's definitely important to talk about, but use that to your advantage. Like, use AI to figure out what type of projects that would be impressive, a company to look at, like for ideas, and then you go like code it out. You know what I mean? Like use it in that way. And then I would say like a big no using AI on like your coding assessments. Like that was a huge deal in the very beginning, like with the amount of people that we saw that were like totally cheating in their like, leak codes. And we're like, you guys, like not like that, like don't use it like that. Companies are even having like AI policies with how you interview. So that's another thing to just like be aware of. Use it to your advantage, like for how you can talk about like, what type of projects and like how you've used it and everything, for sure.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So like if I was in an interview and, I was talking about like my use of AI, like it would be fine to mention to a recruiter, yeah, I use AI to like help me come up with ideas. It like reviews my code. It helps me like generate some like small functions. That wouldn't be a red flag like in those interviews.
No, I personally, I don't think so.
Just want to make sure, because I got that question a lot now where we're kind of in that weird space where like it's so good, like you kind of need to use it, but you want to be careful that you don't get like ruled out by them thinking you're just like an AI vibe coder, right? In the interview.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Obviously, and we were talking about this before as well, we were just filming another video, but how have you seen kind of the bar changing to get into these tech companies since, let's say, 5 years ago, 2021? I know obviously it's more difficult, but is there things that are being screened for more now that weren't back then? What is kind of that trend that you've seen in terms of like the interview difficulty, for example?
Yeah, so I think before it used to be like if you could pass the coding assessment, and pass like, your coding, especially entry level, right? Like seniors, it's a lot more different, but entry level, like you can pass a coding bar, like it or not, like they do look at like schools and degrees, like what you got your degree in and like where you went, and especially if it's like a top tech college, like they do look at that, like for entry level. I won't sugarcoat that, but I would just say like, if you don't have any experience, like what types of projects, like I've talked with great, and it's like, again, how you're positioning yourself. The great engineers like are very like eloquent with how they speak about like their work and like with the impact, like compared to like if you just made a project like just to make one, just so you can put one on your GitHub, like no, like what was the reasoning behind that? And people don't really talk about that. Like, okay, great, but like, why'd you make the project in the first place? Impact, like that's how you can translate that to business impact when you get a job.
Obviously, we talk about this a lot. Sorry, there's a ton of niches, right, within software development, back end, front end, whatever you name it, right? There's so many different ones. From your experience, or what you've seen, is there any niches right now that are like kind of exploding, that are picking up, that you predict are going to be like kind of the next one to get into? And on the other side of things, is there ones that maybe like you wouldn't advise someone to get into? I'm not sure if you like work in all those different fields, but I'm curious.
Yes. So first thing would be security. Huge. You could still be like a back-end engineer, but like in security, that is like a huge thing that we have a ton of hiring priorities around. So I would say security is only going to get bigger. The other thing is infrastructure. Like, it sounds crazy. Okay. But again, you can still be like a back-end engineer, but like focus, like usually the two splits are like product. So like customer facing features versus infrastructure. With all of like the AI, they talk about the AI bubble and everything like that. Like, the infrastructure is gonna go crazy. Like, Meta is building like a huge, like data center in Dallas, like right outside of Dallas. And like the infrastructure piece is going to be huge. I know OpenAI is hiring so much for infrastructure, like engineers and like on that side of the house. So I would say those two are going to be big. Mobile's always hot, but again, it's just like companies look for like the scale, right? And
sure.
That's another big thing. I would say honestly, like front end and like full stack, we did not hire that much for. I would say that is like not as like, we would have maybe quadruple the amount of back end roles compared to front end. Like,
Wow.
everything was back end, like
Okay.
back end, like not that many front end. So I would say that one's more like
Yeah.
not as
on the way out, maybe with all the AI stuff. That's interesting to hear. I mean, I knew that there would be more infrastructure backend, but that magnitude, at least at Uber and the companies you worked at, is interesting to hear. So I think a lot of people will probably find that pretty revealing. And I think when I look at people's profiles too, I look at a lot of students, and most of them all know the same thing. Like, they all know Python and JavaScript and React, and like it's a very familiar stack, and it makes sense because it's easy to get into. It's kind of modern, especially with the what do you call it? Like the startups and whatnot. But if you want to actually stand out, and we talk about this all the time, you need to be good in one particular area. And like Katie's saying, like infrastructure skills that aren't as readily known, especially by junior developers, is something that you'd want to consider. And even just like being good at Java or C++ or C# or something that's not the language that every other student knows coming out of college is probably going to help you. You would agree with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and even I don't see people, like, again too, and like with the students that are coming through, like, I don't even think I've seen one like even dabble in security. I'm like, you guys, like, go into it. You know what I mean? And there's great also security companies so that need engineers. So it's like, okay, just like take it a step further with your thought process for company wise.
For sure. Now, with that in mind, like, I mean, we kind of dabbled on this a little bit, but what do you predict is going to kind of happen over the next 1 or 2 years here in the tech market? Do you think this trend's going to keep up? Do you think hiring is going to return back to normal? What's your prediction for the next few years here?
Ooh, I like this question. Because it's been interesting also with like the return to office that like, oh my God, that's been like the biggest, like everybody's in an uproar, like 3 days in the office, but there's no room for people. And like, people are working like next to a copy machine. I've literally seen, like, it's crazy. Like, so that part's kind of like an interesting piece of that too. I would say that, I don't know, like things also depend so much on like where we're at with like the economy and like as crazy. I think that's one of the biggest things I learned too was like, you think like, okay, these companies are just, everybody uses Uber, like everybody uses Uber Eats. It shouldn't matter. But then when you see, your CEO like at the table with the president, you're like, oh, this is tied into a lot more. Like, and all the big tech companies are all like meeting with him. So I do think it depends on the economy too. Like, and again, I don't think it will get to where it was in 2020. I really don't think it'll go back, but it does ebb and flow, right? And from my mentors that I've learned from, they're like, girl, this is like 2008 all over again. Like the cycles, like it gets bad, it gets good. It gets bad, it gets good. So I think right now we're in like the bad. if you want to call it. So it will go back up again, but I don't think, like, with the cash that they were throwing out for people that were not doing anything, they're checking like their diff counts and like they're checking like it's different. So I would say that it's like the bar will remain, but I think they might loosen it up a little bit just with like the volume, like even like OpenAI's hiring, like you got to fill those spots. Like you have to fill them. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think no one really knows. So that's why I asked. I mean, we'll see what happens. But generally speaking, the advice is always the same, whether it's a good market or a bad market. I mean, position yourself, sell yourself, right? Do the right preparation, follow some kind of strategy when applying. And if you do that, I mean, you can see success in any kind of market because ultimately it's up to you, right? And I think that's the thing we've learned as well, working with a bunch of students, like the ones that actually follow the plan, that go through the roadmap, that, take all of the advice to heart and actually have that agency, they always see success, right? Feeling bad for yourself in the market, I mean, yeah, okay, you could do it. I sympathize with it, but it just doesn't help. So anyways, Katie, thank you so much for joining me here for this video. I think this was really insightful. Now, if you guys are watching this and you want assistance, landing a tech job and you want to work with people like Katie directly, then consider applying to DevLaunch. We'll leave a link down below in the description and look forward to seeing you there.